Okay, this is Mr. West, Rossexmoor Stylish. Today I'm discussing the GCSE History Paper 1, which for us is Crown Punishment and Whitechapel. And the key element of this is what kind of questions can I expect? Let's have a look and see. Now, the idea of this video is to be used in conjunction with something a little bit like this sheet here, okay, which allows you to just recall the key points that you're going to need for the exam. The idea in here is that you write in the key bits of advice, maybe 2 or 3 things, maybe a bit more, that you're going to remember to do for each of the questions. The first thing to say is that the first 3 questions here are on Whitechapel, and the next 3 are the Crown Punishment ones, okay? So, yeah, that's the case. Might be worth starting here, okay? Because the Crown Punishment contains far more marks than the Whitechapel side of it, even though they both have 3 questions. So that was my first bit of advice. Start with question 3, okay? So you can use that sheet, you can make your own version of it, whatever. What are the 3 or 4 general things you're going to try and remember to do in each question? Okay, so the first thing is to describe 2 features of, and you can see here what it looked like on your paper. Pretty straightforward. This is for 4 marks. You need to describe a feature and then, identify a feature and then describe it and repeat it twice. In the exam, in the mark scheme, it says there are slum houses, 1 mark, which had little ventilation, a 2nd mark. The lodging houses were common, 1 mark. They were temporary residences for those that were permanent home, 2nd mark. But you could talk to me about rookeries or whatever else as well. Tell me something about it and what you know, and do that twice. Okay, so question 2 here. Now then, this is an 8 marker, and it's the biggest question on the Whitechapel side, and it's certainly the one that potentially could cause a few hiccups, okay? It asks you, how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the effectiveness of police in Whitechapel? And always going to be that question stem of how useful are 2 sources for an inquiry into something, okay? That's always going to be there. So here off the specimen, we've got a picture of a policeman, an artist's impression, and also an article from the Times, okay? Now, the key thing to do with this is you've got to try and have 2 separate answers. That's the first point. And in each answer, you need to try and do what I've put here as my advice, okay? So, why is the content of the source useful? So, for example, on source A, you could say something like the source is useful in that the harassment of the police constable so close to his headquarters suggests a lack of respect for the local police force. Or in source B, and you might want to pause it and have a read of source B, that's up to you. It is useful in a way it suggests the police had taken additional measures to try and catch Jack the Ripper after the Whitechapel murders. So for both of them, you need to try and talk about the content of the source, okay? That's really important. You must do that for each one, okay? What I would probably do, just to make it clear, is I'd have a source A section, and I'd answer all these things, then a source B, okay? So once you've looked at the content of the source, okay, then you want to try and do about what we call the pan, okay? So what I would say to you is, what's the pan, okay? Now, this is what people tend to struggle with, okay? The purpose, authorship, or nature of the source. So as a rule, people are pretty good at doing what I've got as a blue target there, okay? But what they're not so good at doing is a green or navy, okay? The purpose, authorship, and nature. So, for example, source A, let's stick with that. As it says in the mark scheme, it's an artist impression, published in a cheap, popular paper. It may be deliberately exaggerated to make a point while amusing the readers, which makes it difficult to rely on. It might have exaggerated how little respect there was for the police because it's published in a cheap, popular paper. It's an artist's impression. So that would be a really key point to put in there. And you can see that's about where it's coming from, all right? Similarly with source B, national newspaper intended to inform its readers about police measures being taken. So it suggests the case was seen to be of national significance. Again, where is it coming from? What is the purpose, authorship, and nature? You should always try and do that, okay? And then also, what do you know, okay? What do you know, the red target there, okay? What do you know that could back up the source, okay? So, again, there are rules about police beats, it says on the mark scheme. Constables are supposed to patrol in pairs. It's not shown here, is it? So, they're the key bits of advice. What do you, can you see? And comment on that. What do you know? And comment on that. And those 2 are not that difficult. But then try and get into this purpose, author, and nature. Okay, and look at some of the other points that are there. Okay, so I think this question and the last one on Whitechapel is my least favourite across the whole 3 exams that you're going to take, okay? And that's because I just feel it's so difficult to know exactly how you want to do it. But here's what I've tried to do, and you might want to write these down into your boxes. Pick a detail that you'd like to find more about. So in this case, the mark scheme suggests that the policeman is heavily outnumbered. Okay, then ask a question to link to this detail. Okay, how many policemen were there patrolling Whitechapel compared to other areas of London? And then how would you find out about that? So choose a source that would help you to answer the question. So for example, H Division's police records showing the number of police force and the details of the beat compared with other divisions' police records would be ideal for that. And then finally, what this source would help you find out. It would show me whether enough policemen patrol the area effectively. If, for example, in other areas there was more policemen, then that would show you there was a problem. If it was the same, it would show you that it was right across London. Okay, so you've got to try and pick a detail out that you're unsure about, and then link it to the question, link a question to it. Okay, and then try and which source would you use to find out. But as I say, it is a bit tricky, that one. Okay, now we move on to the Crown punishment side, which, as I did suggest, would be the best place to begin. Okay, explain one way. It will always be the question style here. Explain one way. Okay, and here's my advice: specific features from the period and specific knowledge. Okay, so there's a couple of examples here from the mark scheme. Okay, what I'd be thinking about in the 18th century, it was goods that were, because of the import tax, it was goods that were imported to try and avoid the import tax. Luxuries, like it says there in the mark scheme, tea, brandy or silk. However, in the 20th century, organised crime has got involved, and that's led to smuggling of drugs and indeed of people. Okay, so these are the key things. What do you know about the period? And be specific and knowledge that you've learned from it. Okay, and try and come in. And last thing, just watch out for the question, because sometimes they ask a deliberately obtuse question which seems simple. I can remember one on poaching under William in the 11th century, and then poaching in the 17th century, and a number of students wrote about the 1723 Black Act, which of course is in the 18th century. So just be careful with the wording as well. That'll be my final bit of advice there, because sometimes you can misread it slightly and write about something that's not relevant. Okay, so then there's the 12-mark explain question. Now, this is very similar to the essay question, but there's a slight difference, okay? You're going to write about 3 reasons in 3 separate paragraphs, but you're going to start each paragraph with your line of reasoning. So you don't need an introduction. So why were they changing the prison system? So, for example, you might say, right, well, I think the role of reformers was the main reason they were changing. So you just start like that. The role of reformers were the main reason they were changing the prison system. Okay, and then what you then do is tell me about the role of reformers. Then on the next paragraph, you'd say something like, even though the role of reformers were the main reason that was changing the prison system, the problems with the system itself were also an issue, and you'd tell me about those. But at the end of that second paragraph, you'd have to come in here and say, well, why the reformers, in my example, are more important than the problems in the prison system themselves. Okay, and then you move on to maybe the role of society and the media. You'd say something like, even though the role of reformers was the most important reason, the role of society and the media did have an impact, and you talk about that. Maybe the penny dreadfuls, particularly with the increased harshness of the silent system, I'm thinking with that. But then you'd have to say why that's not as important as the role of reformers. Okay, you wouldn't need a conclusion, because effectively your introduction would be done at the beginning of each paragraph and your conclusion would be done at the end of the second and third paragraph. So you don't need a conclusion there. Okay? And finally, it's the 20-mark essay question. 16 marks for the question and 4 marks for spelling and grammar. So here's 2 questions that we have completed in the year, okay, as examples of that. And here is my advice on the right-hand side of general thing. Now, what I would do with this as well, because you have completed a number of essay questions throughout the year, I'd also have a look at the advice and targets you've been given. Get your book out. All right, and have a look through your assessment book and write any other targets, any other bits of advice you've been given throughout the course on this, okay, and put those in. But those are just general things that you should try and do, okay? So as I say, we've done most work on essays, so we've spent the least time on this video talking about it. But obviously have a look at those. Clear intro, okay, how far you agree or disagree with the question, clear conclusion, 3 paragraphs, line of reasoning at the start and at the end of the second and third paragraph, just like in your 12-marker. The other thing to add is that just be careful with these points here, the bits that come underneath. We've seen examples where I actually wouldn't use those, and that's my final bit of advice. Just because they're there, you don't have to use them. If you only use what's there, then you get penalised. But if you don't use what's there, but you use a range of your own knowledge, then you don't get penalised, you can get the top mark, okay? So perhaps that's the last tag you might want to write down. Fill the sheet in, and then maybe on the evening of your mock or your real exam, a couple of days before, get your parents to test you on these 6 questions. So on the essay, what are the 4 things I'm going to try and do? On the 12 marker, what are the 3 things I'm going to try and do? On the usefulness question, what are the 4 things I've got to try and do there? Now, again, it's just generic, but it'll make sure that it sticks in your mind and you know what you have to do in the exam. Thank you.